Ashley Batistick, and welcome to Embrace the Bounty, where we're not only learning how to make good food, but how we can nurture our good relationships with one another. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing in Los Angeles. I'm also a culinary trained cook, and before I started helping people with their relationships, I was a researcher and recipe developer. My hope is that we'll gather in the kitchen together over a shared meal and let food be the offering that feeds our connection with one another. Today we're making chicken and quinoa soup with wilted greens. It's lemony and bright and packs a punch with loads of leeks and garlic. And as we get cooking, we'll be talking about the stories we often tell ourselves that get in the way of our relationships and how we can debunk them.
In a large stock pot, you'll add your chopped carrots, celery, and onion, along with a handful of black peppercorn and some bay leaves. Add your chicken, and then add the broth. You'll bring to a boil and reduce to a simmer for about 1.5 to 2 hours until the chicken is tender and falls off the bone. If you're short on time, you can absolutely use one of those pre-cooked rotisserie chickens from the grocery store, and as a recovering perfectionist, I fully approve of this move. Next, we'll get started on the base of the soup by adding our leeks and garlic with a little bit of olive oil and cook on medium to low until soft and tender.
This is starting to smell really good, and I can hear it kind of gently cooking. Making this soup brought me back to my early 20s. I was super self-critical and struggled with a lot of shame and self-doubt, and that led to negative thinking and emotions. All confirmed a story that I was either too much or not enough. There would be windows of reprieve, right? Like when I was trying out a new recipe that I loved, I'd feel embraced by the love of that, and I could challenge the story a little bit. But when I was hooked, I was hooked. And it really felt like I was either bad or wrong, and it went sideways from there. It definitely impacted my relationships and prohibited me from trying new things, taking risks and being brave. And then there was the obsessional thinking and the anxiety caused by the story. Maybe some of you know what I'm talking about, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But right now we are going to actually try and keep this heat down low, and we're going to add our lemon juice.
Adding the lemon juice further cooks down the leeks and the garlic, adding a nice mellow flavor.
Okay, after it's reduced by half, it'll kind of take on a little bit of like a pasty substance, right? And this is like all the gold. Okay. All right, now it's time to add our broth. I've removed the chicken and I placed it off to the side for it to cool. And you can use like just any old regular strainer or fine mesh strainer will work as well. I'm going to turn the burner back on actually. And depending on how much the liquid has reduced, you may actually have to add a little bit more liquid back into it, depending on how many people you're going to serve. I've got a family of 4. Sometimes we have friends over. So I'm going to add 2 cups of water. Okay, we're going to bring this back up to a boil, and then we'll reduce it to a simmer to get cooking. And while that's going, we're going to get our quinoa started. I do about a cup. That's probably a good amount. All right, while the quinoa is cooking, I'm going to start to shred the chicken, and I'm going to add it to the soup as it's actually coming to a boil. So how do we challenge and unhook from these stories that tell us that we're not enough? Well, first, it can be helpful if we know what we normally do in response. These stories often make us feel sad or fearful, to name a couple of emotions, and we either get critical of one another or we pull away. That jams pathways of connection between one another, making it hard for us to give and receive love. But if we know that we're inside of a story, we can change this dynamic altogether. I'm going to finish putting this chicken in the soup, and then as soon as our quinoa is done cooking, I'm going to fry up some capers, and then we'll almost be done. All right, these are starting to fry up nicely, and then we'll add them to the soup. If we can start to identify that it's the story that's the problem and begin to challenge it, we're one step closer to being able to open up the pathways of connection between one another. Because if I actually know that I'm enough, I don't feel those feelings that I was talking about and then behave in a particular way in response. My whole body softens, and I actually start to feel like I might want to be in relationship with you or the thing that I love the most. We're gonna add the capers to the soup, and then we're gonna tie all this together. Arugula is super peppery. So good. All right now. Tarragon is got that licorice flavor, so if that's not your bag, you can skip it. Stir it all in. Oh my god, that's it. Hot damn. We're good. And there's something about soups, right, that make us feel fed, full, enough. So after you've spotted and named the story, we're one step closer to breaking down the barriers of disconnection. We move towards what's hard. We embrace ourselves in a way that confirms that we actually are enough. Again, just like how the soup makes us feel. I hope you've enjoyed the very first episode of Embrace the Bounty. I know I have. It's wonderful to have had you in my kitchen. I'll be back next month with a new recipe. Until then, you can check out my Patreon page where you can find the recipe for this soup as well as some additional bonus features on how you can embrace the bounty outside of the kitchen. I'll see you next month.